Hello. I'll start this talk, which is about how we remember things, with a short anecdote. Some years ago, when I worked in St. Petersburg in Russia, I went to a cafe for lunch near where I worked with a few colleagues. The woman who ran the cafe fitted the stereotype of the people who work in shops and cafes in Russia. She treated everyone with equal contempt. I'll digress here for a moment. An excellent example of this poor customer service was a colleague who most mornings stopped at a shop to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola. The shopkeeper disliked him so much that she actually walked out of the back of the shop when she saw him walk in, and he'd have to wait a few minutes for her to return. Anyway, the cafe. A couple of colleagues decided to order the chicken, so they asked for kuritsa, which is the Russian for chicken. The woman working in the cafe almost shouted back at them, "Indierka!" One repeated, "Kuritsa," and she shouted, "Indierka!" And this went on for 3 or 4 attempts before he said, "Okay, Indierka." And we sat down to eat, and it turns out that Indierka is not chicken, it is turkey. Now, on the rare occasions that I meet my old colleagues, we all remember this incident, and we all remember the Russian word for turkey, Indierka. And the reason we remember it is that what happened in the cafe was so memorable. And that memorable exchange with the lady in the cafe means that she taught a group of us a new Russian word very effectively. A great teacher. As a learner of English or any other language, it's obviously important to learn the meaning of new words and to remember these new words. As a rough estimate, a reasonably competent speaker of a second language needs to know about 2,000 words. To study at university in that language requires one to know about 4,000 words as a minimum. I won't go into what it means to know a word, that's a whole different topic. In life, we need to remember many things: what to do, when, where, with whom, how, why, etc., etc. And it's noticeable in the classes that I teach that when I put important dates and tasks onto the whiteboard, students often get their phones out and take a photo of the information. It's a quick and easy way to record what they need to do. However, I was reading an article which suggests that taking a photo is actually a very bad idea, and that is the research which I'll discuss now. And it does relate back to the story about the turkey in the cafe. 2 studies consider the effect of taking photographs on our ability to remember details of what the photograph shows. The first is by Henkel in 2013, published in the Psychological Science Journal, and the other is by Soares and Storm in 2018, published in the Journal of Applied Research in Memory and Cognition. In the first study, the participants went to an art gallery, a tour around the art gallery, and were invited to take photographs of some exhibits and just to look at others. The results found that if the participants photographed an exhibit as a whole, they remembered fewer objects and fewer details about the objects than if they only looked at the objects and did not photograph them. Henkel used the term photo-taking impairment effect, which suggests that because the camera holds the memory, the person's brain does not need to hold the memory, so the memory is forgotten. In effect, when we take a photo, we know that we do not need to remember the details of what we are looking at, so we forget those details. And this forgetting allows the brain to focus attention on other things. The researcher calls this offloading. The second study came to a different conclusion. Soares and Storm asked 42 student participants to look at 15 pieces of art on a computer screen. For 5 of the photos, the participants took a photo with the camera on their mobile phone, and they then deleted that from their phone manually. For another 5 photos, they just observed the art form, and the final 5, they took a photo with the Snapchat app. Now, if you haven't used Snapchat, when you send a photo or video on Snapchat to someone, once he or she has looked at the photo or video, it disappears. So it's a temporary image. The Snapchat user knows it will disappear once they've looked at it. So the participants in this study took a multiple choice test after they'd looked at or photographed these pieces of art. And the multiple choice test had 30 questions about the details of the artwork. Like in the study by Henkel, the students scored much higher when asked to recall details about photos that they did not photograph themselves. Next highest was for the art they took a normal photograph of and then deleted, and in last place they remembered the least about the art that they had taken a Snapchat photo of. The interesting point about this study was that even though the participants knew that the Snapchat photo would be deleted, they still could not remember very many details about what they had Snapchatted, if that's a verb. Hence the conclusion about the brain offloading memories to the camera memory in order to focus on other things may not actually be correct. Having said that, one thing does seem clear. The act of taking a photo does seem to have a negative impact on what is remembered. Taking a photo means we remember less of what we see. In terms of learning a language or any other subject, this would suggest that taking a photo of what the teacher has written on the board is not a good idea. It seems better to write it down on paper, as this engages the brain more actively in the task, and that helps us to remember. So how does this relate to the Indica story at the start? Well, that particular experience was very memorable, and that in itself was enough for a group of people to remember the word, the Russian word for turkey. So to conclude, if you want to remember something, make it memorable in some way. One way to do that is to have a middle-aged, angry Russian woman shout it at you 3 or 4 times. Or if you don't have an angry Russian lady around, engage your brain fully in what you want to learn or remember. Do something with the word or the information. Manipulate it or use it in some way to make your brain work at a deep level. Just looking at something is usually not enough. Thank you.